A while back I did a comparison video between these Spectrum Noir markers and Copic markers. The Spectrum Noirs that I reviewed have the chisel nib and the bullet tip, but I wanted to try out their other line that has the brush tip and compare those to Copic's. And that's what I'm going to do today, because I have the Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers with the brush tip. I also have the Copic markers. Let's see how they compare. Greetings, people of the internet. I'm Scott with Serkworks Art Labs. Welcome, mad creators, to the underground laboratory where we create robots, alien zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. And sometimes when we're creating those things, we do them in marker. And sometimes we compare different marker products. Usually I try different markers and try to compare them to Copic markers. These markers here, because they're sort of the industry standard. They're the ones everyone looks up to. So this is a pretty high bar to meet. We're always looking for a good contender, because the problem with these markers is they are so expensive. So we're always looking for really quality markers that aren't like $8 a marker, which is sometimes what Copics can run. And like I said before, I reviewed these Spectrum Noir markers, and Spectrum Noir is a quality company. They make quality products. The problem is they didn't have the brush tip, and that is like one of the main things that you want to get, or a lot of people. Some people don't care, but the majority of people really want that brush tip like the Copics have, and it's really hard to find a marker that isn't super expensive that has that brush tip that's any good. We've reviewed some before in the past, and you know, with moderate results, let's just say. But anyway, these were great markers, but I really wanted to try out. Spectrum Noir has a huge line of products. They've got another line called the design markers and one called the Illustrator markers, which is the one I was looking at because they have the brush tip. And I was really pleasantly surprised when Spectrum Noir sent me these. Now, I just want to let you know this video is not sponsored by Spectrum Noir, but they did send me these. So these are the Illustrator markers, the ones that I really wanted to try. If you watched that last video, you heard me saying, oh man, these are great, but they need those brush tips. I want to try the brush tips. And these have been new and improved. If you bought these before, they may not be the same because they've redesigned everything. They've told me this. So I want to give these a try. So like I said, what we're always going to do is we are going to compare different markers, this time the Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers to the Copic markers. But the way I like to do that is I like to do it side by side, so you can see exactly what they look like. So I'll pick Spectrum Noir, I'll try to match the colors with the Copic markers, and we'll take these two drawings, these two printed out drawings that I do, and side by side we're going to try one with Spectrum Noir, one with Copic, see how they look. And while we're doing that, I'm also going to talk about some of the features, some of the pluses, some of the minuses, and all the stuff you need to know about Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. Let's get to it. Okay, so here we go. These are the Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers that Spectrum Noir sent me, and they come in, these are 6-piece sets. They also come in 12 and individually as well. And so let me kind of just show you. These are kind of broken down into different color packs. I've got the earth, which is more like the earth tones, obviously. Portrait, they're more skin tones. You got your basics, and you got your essentials, which are grays and khakis, and I think the colorless blender is in there as well. So pretty awesome. So first impression, just by the box, these are really attractive packaging. I know that doesn't really mean a lot to everyone, but to me it's sort of reassuring that you're getting a quality product if they're putting that much into the packaging. I come from kind of the advertising world, so I can appreciate quality packaging. And yeah, it's you know, there's, I don't know if you can see that, there's a little spot varnish there. Looks like some metallic. Yeah, so it's really, yeah, I like the way these are packaged. So let's go ahead and pull these out, and we're just going to do a real quick compare these two markers. So this is the Copic marker. This is the Spectrum Noir Illustrator marker. Spectrum Noir a little bit bigger, which could mean that they hold more ink. I'm not exactly sure, but it looks that way. So first off, of course, we've got the little indicator. We've got the bullet nib and the brush tip. Now, a lot of markers that do have the brush tip, like this, the Copic markers, also have the chisel tip. With this, you don't get that, but Spectrum Noir has a number of different lines in different configurations. Some have the chisel tip, some have the bullet nib, and some have bullet, whatever. They haven't, depending on what you're into, they probably have a line with the combination that you want. This is fine for me. For instance, if you want to get some nice lines, that bullet nib is really nice. Of course, you can also get the same effect with the chisel nib or chisel tip. You can get that, but then you can get broad. So depending on your preference, that may be a plus or a minus to you. But the main thing we're looking at, I think, is the brush tip. So here we go. I'm just going to go ahead, and this is a Spectrum Noir. I'm going to lay some color down. It goes down smooth. It's a nice firm tip. And then here is the Copic. So yeah, they compare really well, I think. Let's kind of show side by side. So the Copic, a little longer tip. It's a little bit softer, and the Spectrum Noir, it's a little stubbier, and it's a little firmer, but not so much that it's like a huge difference or any kind of it's not like a deal breaker in any way, one way or the other. So what's going on? I can't. Okay, there we go. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to do a comparison. We're going to put two illustrations, do side by side. One side we're going to have the Copic markers, the other side the Spectrum Noir markers. We'll see how they compare. Okay, so I have here two identical sketches, and to the left I'm going to be using the Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. To the right, I'm going to be using the Copic markers. We're going to see how how they compare to the other colors, and I tried to pick out as close to the same colors as I can, but I can't. Different companies have different color variations, but I think I got pretty close with these. So as you can see, the way I'm laying them down and everything, so far so good. I am digging the feel of these Spectrum Noir markers. I don't really see a noticeable difference than the Copics from the way they lay down and everything. But I want to talk about some of the pros and the cons of the Spectrum Noir. Now, these are a marker that I've been wanting to try for a while, so again, I am thankful that Spectrum Noir sent these out to me. But this is my review, these are my opinions and everything, and that's as long as it's a good product, then I'm willing to endorse it. So and so far so good. So anyway, here we go. The pros. Now there have been some other reviews on the Spectrum Noir marker. I think Drama Jazzer did a review. He did one of the old version. They've totally redesigned the nibs, the brush tips and everything. From basically, it's a whole new nib. So if there was any problems with them kind of not being, to like a nice point or to fraying or anything like that, that problem's been solved. So if you're watching like an older video, you do want to make sure that you're getting like the newer version when you're going to order these, that they're not like the kind of leftover from what they had before or whatever. Because I think Jazik sort of had a negative, just not the whole product, but just that he wasn't that thrilled with that. But I noticed that he is putting these in his art boxes, the new version. So obviously he's probably changed his tune because he's probably seen what these new markers can do. So I didn't try the old ones out, so I can't really speak to that. But I can only speak to the new versions here with the new tips, and I am digging them. They're like I said, they're a little firmer than Copics and a little stubbier, but that to me is sort of neither here nor there. Doing this side by side, I can tell you that there's really not a big difference. So yeah, new improved brush tip, that's awesome. And that also says that Spectrum Noir is listening to criticisms, and they're willing to make changes, willing to improve their product. And they've got a big product line. They've got all kinds of stuff in addition to these markers. But anyway, so the brush tip is great. That's the big pro. I mean, that's what we're trying to find, is a brush tip
that is a lot more affordable than the Copic markers, because as good as those markers are, they are super expensive and not everyone can afford them. So we need some other options. So yeah, so the this, again, as I mentioned before, they have a brush tip and they also have the bullet nib. So that could be that's up to you what you guys prefer. Copic's a little different, where they have the chisel tip and the brush tip. So if you prefer that, that could be a make it or break it for you. But if I find that I use mostly the brush tip, and that's about all I use. I don't really use the chisel tip that often. I don't use the bullet tip that often. So anyway, but like I said before, the major plus here is the price. I mean, if you buy them in packs and everything, and you can, like I said, you can buy these in packs, you can buy them individually or whatever, but if you buy them in packs, you can get it down to about $3 a marker. So other than that, if you buy them individually, sometimes they're around $4, but that's the most I've seen. Whereas Copics, if you just get them not on sale at like a Michael's, they're going to be at about $8. So that's about half the price, or a little less than half the price. So that is a big plus. Another plus is, like Copics, they are also refillable. So that's super awesome. And they have a variety of different colors, and they have the refills for those. They also have the replacement nibs. So if in the event that your nib is bad, and that's another thing, if you have I assume, and this is me assuming, but I'm assuming if you have the old version of before they came up with the new nibs of the Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers, I assume you can buy new nibs and replace those. So that's something that even if you do have those old versions, you can kind of upgrade them for less than the cost of getting all new ones, I assume. Like Copics, they also have, and unlike the other Spectrum Noir, their basic color system, the color system, they just have numbers. They don't have names for each one of their markers. So for instance, if you've got like a color called coral or whatever the different colors are, that's nice because it's hard to remember those numbers. But you also want to have that kind of numbering system, and they have both. So that's a definite plus. Not all markers have both the name for the marker and the number of the marker, so that's good. And let's see. So as I mentioned before, the Spectrum Noir, I would say this is a plus. They are slightly larger than the Copics, and I'm just guessing. I haven't broken them open to see, but I'm guessing that means they probably hold a little bit of ink, a little bit more ink. But they are refillable, and that's cool. And I haven't checked the price of the refills versus the price of the Copics, but I'm imagining they're probably less. That's just an assumption, though, until I go and look. But you guys can check all that stuff out online. So they don't tend to bleed at all. I mean, they're just, and that's pretty much the same as Copic. They're both, I mean, they're very similar the way they lay down and everything. So, they have this kind of hexagonal shape, which could be a con, it could be a pro, but the thing about that is it allows them so they won't like roll off your desk. And most markers are shaped like that. I think the only ones that I know, like the chameleon markers, they're totally round, so they will roll off your desk if that's a concern for you. But these ones, they I mean, I imagine if your desk is in enough of an angle, or any marker is going to roll off your desk. But anyway, that's something, some of these smaller things are for us to consider. So, and as far as those brush tips, going back to if you want something a little firm, if you want it a little softer, that's up to you. So that could be a pro or a con. The Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers have a little bit stiffer nib and it's a little stubbier. Again, so what are some of the cons of the Spectrum Noir? Well, they don't have as many colors as the Copics. They do have a pretty big range of colors. They have 216 marker colors versus Copic's 358. But I don't know too many people that have all 358. I don't know too many people that have Copics or Copics. I keep going missing my pronunciation. I'm trying to get that right. I'm trying to say Copics over and over again because I get criticized for that. But anyway, so the yeah, I don't know too many people that have 216 Copic colors. So you've got a pretty wide range of colors, but there are definitely more Copic colors than the Spectrum Noir. So it's something to think about. The caps on these are a little awkward. Because of the hexagonal shape, when you try to put them back on, you kind of have to rotate them a little bit until you get them to match up, and sometimes that can be a hassle because you're not always looking at them. Usually when you're doing markers, you're switching back and forth pretty quickly, and that can be a problem trying to get the caps and the marker to jive when you're putting them back on. So that's something to consider. The other thing that I'm not a big fan of is that the caps don't fit on the back of the markers. And a lot of markers are like that. Copics are the same thing. They don't snap onto the back. I like that, and a few markers do that. And I like that because it helps you from getting those caps lost if you're kind of going back. Because usually my natural inclination is just to take that cap off and try to put it on the back of my marker while I'm drawing with it or coloring with it. But neither Copics nor Spectrum Noir have that feature. So yeah, that's just a little gripe for me. Another negative that a lot of these markers are guilty of, and I think Spectrum Noir might be a little more guilty than some of the other ones, but and that's just the colors not matching on the on the tips or on the caps, not matching the actual color. And khaki, I'm talking about you. I mean, that color was so far off from what it showed on the back. But I've noticed that with Copics. I've noticed that with every marker. But some of them are just so far off. It's like, how is this even close to the same thing? But that's just a reason why we need to create color charts and things like that. I don't really rely too heavily on what the cap color is. But sometimes it's just like you pull one out and you're like, oh, that looks like kind of like what I need, and then you put it down like, whoa, that's nothing like what it shows. So, but I can't really. I mean, that's definitely a con. But as far as comparing it to Copics, I can't really. It's not really a negative between the two because they're both guilty of that. So yeah, those are some of the pros and cons. But all in all, I mean, again, we're getting further along, and I guess if I had to say what the better marker is, I'd still probably go with the Copic markers, but it is such a slight difference as far as what makes it better. And it's okay, put it this way, it's not, the Copics I wouldn't say are 50% better than they maybe are like 10% better, but the price difference is like a 50% difference. So, I'm really for the bang for your buck. I don't think for as inexpensive as the Spectrum Noirs are, and because they're a quality product, because they're fairly readily available. They're a pretty big company. They're all original price. One thing you'll notice when you go shopping for some of the alcohol-based markers out there, you'll start to notice that a lot of them are similar. You'll start to notice like a Hoo, and then there's other brands that look kind of similar, and that's because these are just, a lot of these markers are manufactured in China, and companies will buy them, they'll put their own branding on them and sell them. So, a lot of times you're getting the same thing even with just a different name, and it's all this kind of the same product, and some of them really aren't that great. Spectrum Noir, they develop their own products and everything themselves, and they've got their own line. This is just one in their line. So, yeah, they're a quality company. They're making a quality product, and they're charging a very reasonable price for what you're getting compared to Copic. So, I mean, really, I think if you're unless you're super, you got to have the best and everything like that, and you want it, and money is no option. You can go with the Copic markers, and of course they have more colors, so there's certain colors you can get. But I'm not like a marker snob as far as I am not. I'm not beholden to one particular brand. I use anything and everything, and these are definitely going to be in my repertoire. I mean, the Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers are great. They're one of the few inexpensive brush tip markers that are quality, and yeah, I highly recommend them. I really do. So anyway, I'm just kind of finishing up this drawing right now, and you can kind of compare it yourself based on how both of these look. Again, you've got the Spectrum Noir on the left, Copic's on the right, and I don't know. What do you think? What looks better? I can tell you from experience in doing these that there wasn't any struggle with either one, like, oh, this isn't doing what I want it to do. They both go down very well, both quality markers. So you just have to figure out if you want that extra quality and you're willing to pay for it, but it's only a little bit extra. That's the Copic markers. If you want a budget product that is a really good product, maybe think about picking up a set or two of these Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers, because I'm really digging them. So, but you got to make up your own mind. But hopefully this video will help you make that decision. So that's that.
Okay, so here we go. Look at this. I would say the colors are pretty close to one another. They lay down great. I was really super impressed with the Spectrum Noir. These are the Spectrum Noir. These are the Copics. Like I said, sometimes you can't match the colors exactly, but they seem to go on just the same and everything. But the price difference is just, you know, there's a huge price difference. Unfortunately, they don't have a lot of colors in Spectrum Noir. But what I always like to say, and this is my advice to you, is just, you know, I would recommend go out, get Spectrum Noir, get whatever colors you can get, and then fill in the spaces with Copics or whatever else. That would be my advice. I don't really stick to one particular marker, but I just don't like paying, you know, $8 per marker. Sometimes you can get the Copic markers on sale. Spectrum Noir, like I said, quality product. I would really recommend these. I am going to get more. I'm going to get whatever colors I can get in Spectrum Noir that I don't already have that they sent me. Thank you. And then I'll just fill in some spaces with Copic markers, and because really there's not a whole lot of difference in the quality from what I can tell. Sometimes as you continue using them, I'm using them just now, so this is my initial interpretation. Sometimes, but I know that they've redesigned the nibs and everything, so whatever problems they may have had in the past, it sounds like they fixed those. Unlike, you know, like the Artist Loft, when I did those, I gave them a pretty favorable review, and then I found out over time those things start to fray, and they're not great, but they are cheap. But man, I don't know if you can beat Spectrum Noir. So that is the review. I'm really looking forward to getting more of these, and you know, but I still love my Copics. So anyway, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. I'll see you guys later. That is all. Follow me at Serkworks on social media. Do you like making comics? Then go to Serkworks.com and pick up the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's packed full of fonts, brushes, templates, and more. And best of all, it's totally free.